Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Sunday. Yes, the day of rest, right? So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, I thought we'd talk about life lessons. And this is going to be a group participation because a lot of you guys and gals are older. And you know what I'm talking about when it comes to life lessons and how sometimes we have to go through them. So, stay tuned. Hey, good morning. Welcome back. My name is Eric, if you didn't already know it, and this is the weekend. This is Sunday sermon, as some put it. What are we talking about when it comes to life lessons? And life lessons are things that people try to forewarn you that not to do X, Y, or Z because if you do, these are going to be the repercussions, right? But what I have found over my lifetime is you really have to go through it to understand it and learn from it. It's all fine and dandy. I even find myself doing that with my kids and my grandkids, is saying, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. I already tried it. Don't reinvent the wheel. But in the end, they go through it. And, God isn't going to give you anything more than what you can't handle. All right? That's a given. So, why is it so important that we have to go through these life lessons? It's as we grow older, hopefully wiser, that we've learned from our mistakes, life lessons, and don't continue to redo them. Do those do-overs right in the shop everybody hates. That's what life lessons are about. If you're not smart enough to learn from it the first time, I think you said, Amos, if you do the same thing over and over again, looking for a different result, that's insanity. But yeah, I see that happening a lot with people, especially the young people now. You tell them this is what's going to happen, and they, yeah, 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 and they blow you off because you're an old cantankerous fool. That's what I am, right? But seriously, I mean, when I was young and people were telling me that, I was the same way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, you're so full of it. Until I had to go through it. And then I'm like, wow, they were right. But what was the better learning lesson? Somebody telling me that this might happen or actually having it happen and learning from it? See, this all goes back to the more time you hear, the more experiences you have, good and bad, the more wisdom you have. But if you're not learning from the bad experiences, you're going to redo them over and over again, like Groundhog Day, until that light bulb finally goes on in your head and says, you know what? Let's not do that again. I was splitting firewood yesterday afternoon and a young fella stopped in. He worked for us years ago. And he's a good mechanic. He's what you call a backwoods mechanic. He doesn't understand a lot of the stuff, but he knows how to fix stuff, right? And he saw me out there splitting wood, so he swung in and he felt the need to apologize to me. And I said, why are you apologizing to me? And he said, well, hadn't you heard? And I said, heard what? I don't get into everybody else's gossip. I'm too busy creating my own. And he's like, I just got out of jail. He said, I got with the wrong group of people that I thought were my friends. They were stealing and actually bringing the stuff to my house and acting like they didn't just steal a bunch of stuff from somebody else. And he said that there's actually the one guy was stealing from him as well. And I told him, I said, you know what? The problem is guilt by association. That's the life lesson. Is if you hang with the wrong person, you're going to get that reputation, even if you're doing nothing. And he did time in jail because his so-called friends were using his house as a stash house, I guess. But he was telling me a friend of his, very close for over 20 years, wouldn't even speak to him. And he finally confronted him and said, what's going on? He said, look, the people you are hanging out with are not good people. And if it's guilt by association, if we're friends, that means I'm just as bad as what you guys are doing. So he explained to him, give it some time, get on the right track, and then come back and we'll revisit a friendship at that point in time, but not before. Not before. And I told him, I said, that's very reasonable, to be honest with you. He's not saying he's going to cut you out of his life for good. It's just he needs to see something on your part showing that you have turned over a new leaf. You've heard that expression. And got on the right path. Right? But we have the same thing when it comes to relationships, whether it's, family, friends, spouses. It's not going to be all happy days, right? It just can't. And I explained to somebody years ago, I said, how can you know what happy feels like if you've never been sad or depressed? How do you even define normal? Because it's like hot is no good if you don't have cold. Like I taught my kids when they're growing up. But no, what life lessons have you guys learned? I mean, there's a gazillion of them that I've gone through and survived. That's what I call it. If you can survive it and come out better for it, then you've achieved that status of learning that life lesson. And it's always tucked back there so that when you see it again, it's like danger, danger, right? Stay away. And that's wisdom. If you're just starting out and you're young, you got a whole lifetime ahead of you and a whole bunch of learning lessons. And expect to have to go through them because that's the best way to learn. God gives us these learning lessons in order to stage us for towards the end of how to be a good person, of how to avoid doing things to other people, whether intentional or not, so that you're not getting into heated things like this young lad with his friends and going to jail over it. But he felt the need to apologize to me. And I said, you don't need to apologize to me at all. My only question would be, did you learn from it? He goes, yeah, I learned that I need to pick new friends, better friends. And I said, well, that's a start. That's a start. But what about all this stolen goods and thieves and having it all at your house? Because I don't believe that you didn't know anything about it. Because you're a smart kid. Smart kids don't let just people bring a bunch of crap over and put it in your garage to store it that are stuff that's stolen. Then he said, yeah, I kind of had my doubts. And I said, yeah, common sense was sitting there kicking you in the ass saying, what are you doing? But I said, you got a second chance again. You've done your time. You paid your penance. Start from this day forward. Well, he said that a lot of people think bad of me. And I said, well, you can't control what other people think. There's your first issue right now. Is the only thing that you can do is work on yourself. All right? Do exactly what you just told me you're going to do. And those people will change their minds once they see it. They're not going to believe you by you telling them. It's let me see your actions from this point on. And that's what life is all about when it comes to learning lessons is don't tell me you're not going to do X, Y, or Z. Just don't do it. Or don't tell me you're gonna and then you don't. See what I'm saying? I don't worry about what other people think to a certain extent. Of course, I'm not a narcissistic person, but I've learned over time that if you worry about what everybody else thinks all the time, it's going to kind of immobilize you. That's not the right word. Of where you don't do anything because you're so fearful of offending somebody else or making somebody else upset. You don't have that power. That's in their court, right? Of deciding how they're going to react to certain things. As I explained it to this young lad, I said, look, from years of experiences of doing asinine things, I always worried about what everybody else thought. And it bothered me, just like it's bothering you. But here's the best advice I can give you. Don't give it another thought. Because somebody else is going to do something asinine that's going to take the heat off you and put it onto them. Somebody always is doing something. So you're not going to be in the spotlight, and everybody is not going to be thinking about negative things about you all day long. You're doing a fine job of it all by yourself. Nobody else is. They might even think of you if they see a picture or somebody mentions you. But other than that, people are not sitting around thinking of you, right? Are you sitting around thinking of everybody else? No. So in the comments, what life lessons have you learned from that you felt were the most valuable? Curious to hear what's going on. But on that note, you guys have a great Sunday. I'm going out hunting with my son this morning. I didn't go yesterday. Didn't feel good. But I got a lot of wood split. It's a good thing. On that note, enjoy.